Hello there, good evening. You're watching Q News. I'm Mark Summers. Today marks the start of our special economic coverage. 4 days of top stories and expert analysis on the events that shaped the regional and global economy this year. Throughout the week, we'll spotlight the most influential sectors and defining economic stories of 2020. Top economic stories. Selma, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mark. And we start off with Canada, where Prime Minister Mark Carney pledged $2.5 billion in new economic assistance for Ukraine during a meeting with President Vladimir Zelensky in Halifax. And the funding aims to support reconstruction, unlock nearly $10 billion in IMF and World Bank loans, and guarantee a $322 million European bank loan to strengthen Ukraine's energy security. Carney emphasized that the aid reflects Canada's commitment to helping Ukraine recover and rebuild amid ongoing Russian attacks. In Europe, Wasted Wind Tracker data has reported that the cost of switching off wind turbines and using alternative power sources in 2025 has risen nearly at 20% from last year, reaching £1.46 billion. Households and businesses ultimately shoulder these costs through higher energy bills. Curtailment occurs when grid congestion prevents wind power from reaching demand centers, forcing expensive gas plants to provide replacement electricity. And the figure is expected to climb further as the UK expands wind and solar capacity to meet net zero targets, while delays in grid upgrades risk adding billions more in curtailment costs. Bulgaria is set to adopt the euro on Thursday, becoming the 21st member of the eurozone. And while the government says the move will boost trade, lower costs, and strengthen ties with the EU, many Bulgarians fear rising prices, with recent polls showing nearly half oppose the change. Officials insist any impact on inflation will be modest and temporary, but analysts warn political instability could limit the benefits of the euro adoption. In Asia, Hong Kong Financial Secretary Paul Chan has raised the city's 2025 economic growth forecast to a 3.2%, up from an earlier estimate of a 2 to 3%, citing strong momentum and efforts to strengthen its role as a financial innovation and trade hub. Chan said Hong Kong will attract more IPO listings, promote international use of China's yuan, and invest in sectors such as artificial intelligence and biotechnology. He added that resilient exports, rising investment, and recovering consumption have supported growth, with the Hang Seng Index up about 30% this year. And moving on to the MENA region, where Egypt's Suez Canal Authority has signed a $22 million deal with the Japan International Cooperation Agency, the JICA, to fund its first diving support vessel, the DSV. The 45-meter ship will enhance maritime safety, support towing and ship maneuvering, and assist search and rescue operations. Equipped with dual-fuel engines, pressure chambers for divers, and facilities for 29 personnel, the vessel will be built in Japan under international safety standards, boosting the canal's operational capabilities. Syria's central bank governor Abdel al-Hasriya announced that 2 zeros will be removed from the Syrian pound with the launch of a new currency at the end of this week, and making every £100 equal to 1 new lira. All bank balances will be converted to the new currency at the start of the new year, with a free exchange period lasting 90 days and no fees or taxes allowed. The old and new currencies will circulate together during the transition, beginning with the replacement of the £1,000, £2,000 and £5,000 notes. El-Hasriya said the move reflects the bank's reform efforts and aims to stabilize the currency through sound policies and market controls. Moreover, a joint report by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics and the Palestine Monetary Authority have shown that the Palestinian economy suffered a severe recession in 2025, with the Gaza Strip's gross domestic product plummeting by an 84% compared to 2023. The report described economic activity in Gaza as on the verge of complete collapse. While the West Bank's economy contracted by 13%, unemployment in Gaza has surged to over 77%, deepening a humanitarian and economic crisis in the territory. And in the tech world, Amazon has said that it has decided to stop pursuing plans to deliver goods by drone in Italy, citing broader business regulatory challenges despite progress with aerospace authorities. Italy's Civil Aviation Authority, the INAC, called the decision unexpected, linking it to company policy and recent financial developments. Amazon had completed initial drone delivery tests in San Salvo in December 2024, but said a strategic review led it to halt the project as the current regulatory environment does not support its long-term goals. And Coupang founder Kim Bom has issued his first public apology for the recent leak of the customer data, pledging to announce a compensation plan soon. And in a statement on the company website, Kim expressed profound remorse for disappointing the South Korean customers. The company said it has restored all leaked personal information and confirmed that data from 3,000 of its 33 million customers was saved on a suspect's personal computer but not transferred or sold. Kim has faced criticism for missing parliamentary hearings on the breach and again informed the National Assembly he cannot attend this week's session. And that wraps up tonight's top economic stories, and over to Mark, who will take us into the sector transforming markets, industries and global power, artificial intelligence.
Thank you very much, Selma. Fascinating stuff. Be very interested to see that rollout of the new Syrian currency. We'll keep an eye on it here at Q News. Now, in 2025, artificial intelligence reshaped the global economy, redefining who holds power and who gets left behind. From trillion-dollar investments and record tech deals to job disruption and geopolitical tension, AI has moved from innovation to infrastructure.
Power no longer wears a human face. It runs on code. Time magazine's Person of the Year is not a president or a pioneer, but the architects of artificial intelligence. Across its covers appear NVIDIA chief Jensen Huang, Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, ex-owner Elon Musk, and AI godmother Fei-Fei Li, a clear signal that algorithms and the executives behind them now shape economies and societies at unprecedented speed. Turbocharged by OpenAI's launch of ChatGPT in late 2022, AI has moved from breakthrough to backbone. That shift defines the global economic story of 2025. Staggering $3 trillion investment cycle in AI infrastructure has ignited a historic race for dominance, pushing global M&A to a near record $4.8 trillion as tech giants scramble to lock down data, cloud capacity, and cybersecurity. Google's $32 billion purchase of Wiz captures the sky-high valuations attached to AI-enabling assets, while NVIDIA's $5 trillion market capitalization reflects its chokehold on the GPUs powering the AI boom. Yet this growth is increasingly complicated by regulation, geopolitics, and labor disruption. The great regulatory clash has seen the U.S. assert federal primacy through a December 2025 executive order to block state-level AI laws. While the EU's AI Act imposed costly transparency and compliance requirements. At the same time, a geopolitical supply chain meltdown emerged after the Dutch government seized control of chipmaker Nexperia from its Chinese parent WingTech, halting wafer shipments and reviving fears of a chip crisis 2.0 across global industries. This instability coincides with a profound labor market shift. While the World Economic Forum projects a net gain of 78 million jobs by 2030, the short-term reality is defined by automation-led layoffs. Companies have explicitly tied job cuts to AI adoption, from Salesforce eliminating 4,000 customer support roles to Accenture cutting more than 11,000 positions as resources shift from routine work to specialized AI skills. The fastest growing jobs now span both extremes, from AI and machine learning specialists to delivery drivers, care workers, and farm workers, underscoring how the AI productivity shock is reshaping labor demand at every level of the global economy.
Well, to talk us through all things AI, we are joined from Riyadh by AI expert at Techlumi, Lina Timofeeva. Thank you very much for being here with us on the line from Riyadh. So tell us, how has AI reshaped the global economy and global economic power this year?
Thank you much for having me with you today. It's been an exceptional year for AI. For example, the AI architects have been named the Person of the Year by the Times Magazine. But essentially what we see that United States are leading in terms of the AI platforms and advanced chips. But at the same time, China is racing ahead in AI implementation and some of the projects. There are massive investments into AI and AI data centers. And we've seen that S&P 500 Global Index is really driven by some of the major AI-related events. For example, in January, when we saw DeepSeek from China that was offering ultra low-cost training models, all the stocks went down and there was a lot of concern. But at the same time, we've seen massive deals where NVIDIA has been valued at $5 trillion. And we have seen, some of the AI stocks like NVIDIA, OpenAI, and the top 7 companies in the US being responsible for the market share of the S&P 500 index. So it's been a big year.
I must say that we're very much enjoying the on our screens right now, many AI robots, which are very entertaining. Now, you mentioned there Time Magazine naming the architects of AI Person of the Year. What message is this sending to businesses and to governments?
I think that there are two sides. If you are a business, then AI is one of the levers of the innovation, and it does impact your corporate value. However, if you are the policymaker, if you are a government, you should be aware not only of the positives of the AI, but also of the risks. So we have seen a lot of challenges where AI was used for cybercrime or deepfakes. And, ultimately, whilst we have the architects of AI on the cover of the Times Magazine, it's how we as humans choose to use this technology. And if we want to use it as a multiplier for inclusion and opportunity, or perhaps it could become a catalyst for inequality.
Now, AI investment hit $3 trillion and merging and acquisitions nearly $4.8 trillion this year. How sustainable is this surge?
So there has been a lot of concern around the AI bubble. because the surge is only sustainable if the revenue keeps catching up. Now, what you need to think about is some of the large entities like The Economist, they are warning that even though AI may be a major technology, some of the investors are backing the wrong companies, or perhaps they are overpaying. And then something which we see is that wealth is highly concentrated. So for example, only in 2025, AI has added more than 500 billion into the net worth of the biggest US tech billionaires. And we see some of the companies like Nvidia and a few others, so it's 8 in total, which are valued more than 1 trillion. However, if you look at the same companies like OpenAI, they're losing more than $83 million every day, and that's a lot of money. So now if we look at the users, only 5% of the users are paying anything for the services of OpenAI. So the idea is, yes, the demand will surge and the users will become sticky and they will convert. But, you know, a lot of it is going to take time, and a lot of it is essentially going to take time for AI to bring back the return on the investment, which is being made right now. So a lot of investors right now are focusing on protection against the AI bubble and the AI debt burst.
Yes, I mean, this is slightly reminiscent of the early days of the internet when they were struggling to work out how to monetize it. Nvidia's market cap reached $5 trillion. Is that a reflection of real economic value, or is that market hype? And of course, you mentioned that horrible word, or that word that scares so many people, a bubble there. Is it a bubble?
So there are concerns around sustaining 5 trillion valuation longer term, and it could be a bubble. So if you look at it on the positive side, NVIDIA has a near monopoly on the GPU chips. And this is very, very important because they are used to train their LLMs. And because of this, NVIDIA is getting a lot of backing from some of the major players. However, on the negative side, the cost and the, it's very expensive to rent the GPU. So if you are an AI startup, and a lot of AI startups, they can't really afford to rent these GPUs. So longer term, I'm not sure how much demand NVIDIA will get from some of the smaller players. What I think is in the medium term, it will become apparent that the GPUs are overpriced, and then perhaps the valuation of NVIDIA will come down. It's unlikely to be less than 1 trillion. It's probably going to be above 1 trillion, but it's likely to correct to a smaller number than 5 trillion.
Okay. And what about AI assets? How are tech giants' acquisitions of these assets shaping global competition?
So something which we have seen this year is tech giants like Microsoft Cloud, OpenAI, Meta. They are investing heavily into some of the AI companies. And in some cases, there are clear companies like Scale AI that are bringing, the clean data, the structured data that trains AI systems. So for example, Meta invested 10 billion into Scale AI. But in some cases, it's not the investment in data, it's the investment into AI-driven security tools. Like Google has acquired a company around cloud security. It's called Wiz for $82 billion, which is quite expensive. Now, what seems to be happening is that the big firms, they're trying to have the power within, to carry it within themselves, which is why they are acquiring the smaller players in software, talent, data, and beyond. So if you think of somebody in Middle East, for example, who wants to adopt AI at scale, they're likely going to go to one of the major companies, to one of the major giants. And then, instead of going to the smaller vendors. So what this essentially means is that in the longer run, these companies could become the default AI supermarkets for every other industry. And this could mean that there is a lot of concentration within quite a small number of big players from the US.
Of course, the US and the EU are implementing contrasting and different AI regulations. What is the difference between the two, and how is that affecting companies?
So if you look at EU, it's very precautionary. It's very risk-based framework. So it's called EU AI Act that started last year. If you look at the US, they are very much into light touch and innovation-first approach. Essentially, if you are a global company, say you are based in Silicon Valley, but you want to offer a chatbot to EU, for example, in Paris or Germany, then this means that you have to abide by the EU law. So what this means is in Europe, there is more safety, more focus on safety, but there is a slower pace of rollouts, and there is higher expenses in terms of research and development. If you look at US, it's more focused on innovation. It's more helping US win within the AI race. But at the same time, there are concerns that lack of regulation or, smaller regulation may bring customer trust, may lessen the customer trust. So essentially what this means is the global companies, they follow the different rules, whether they operate in US or Europe. There is a potential that the European rules will become a baseline because they are more stringent. And we have seen some of the large companies advocating that whilst they are following the EU AI Act, they are also advertising their services, AI services, as being trustworthy as one of their selling points.
Now, AI adoption has led to major layoffs, and this is one of the risks of AI, isn't it? And it's going to really change the way that people earn a living. How should workers prepare for this shift? Is there any way to prepare for it? Is it just going to be an avalanche that's going to take a lot of our jobs?
So I think something is AI is a very powerful technology, and we have seen before different variations of technologies that happened. We had the computers that would emerge. We had, different mobile phones that would come out. So essentially, there is nothing, completely different around this cycle. We have seen before, a few centuries ago that there would be a person who would ring the bell, and now we don't have these people because we have an alarm clock, right? So essentially, it's all around adopting within certain industries which can be more impacted by AI. These industries could be where you have more of a repetitive or manual work, or something where you can improve your workflow and make it much faster. So to answer your question, I feel that there are two key things. One is upscaling yourself as much as possible within AI, but also perhaps within the broader skills.
Okay.
And being able to do the job which is broader than the current job which you may be doing.
Okay.
But the second one is thinking about the human impact.
Indeed. Well, I'm thinking about the human impact. I'm worried that it's going to be a robot presenting this show tomorrow. Alina Timofeeva, thank you very much from Techlumi. Thank you very much for joining us. It was a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much for joining us from Riyadh. Now we continue our coverage with European policymakers under pressure as US tax incentives and the EU-US trade deal driving companies to shift investments across the Atlantic. CEOs are scaling back or delaying European projects, while the US has captured over 100 billion euros in AI funding, compared with less than 7 billion euros across the entire EU. For more on this, we are joined from Paris by Meher Nicholas Fursley, who's the Director General of the World Pensions Council. Welcome back to Q News. So, Nick, a recent survey shows EU and UK CEOs shifting research and development and production to the US. What's going on here? Why is this happening?
Delighted to join you today, and Merry Christmas to you and your viewers. I'm afraid it's just the beginning, right? So that survey was conducted 2 months ago or 7 weeks ago, and it was published earlier this month. And basically, it's the beginning. So if you look at it's a survey based on a large sample of CEOs and CFOs of big European companies, blue chip companies, right? And so one of the main questions that were asked, what will you do in terms of, global investment and R&D, blah, 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 domestically and internationally in the future, following, Trumponomics, right? The Trump shock. And roughly half of them said that they wouldn't change anything for the time being because it's early days, right? I think 5% said, oh, as a consequence of Trumponomics, we're going to invest more domestically, locally in Britain, Germany, France. 5% is miserable. And then I think 40% said, you know what, we have no choice. We're going to invest more in new factories or expanding existing factories in Minnesota, Illinois, Oklahoma, and reduce what we spend on industrial production and high-tech R&D here in Europe. So this is really horrible because when you think of it, barely 8 or 9 months after Trump entered the White House, we have nearly half of the CEOs of the biggest British, German, Italian, French blue chips already saying, you know what, Europe is a lost cause. In the next 5 years, I'm going to invest most of my, state-of-the-art industrial production facilities and research labs. I'm going to move them to America. So really, it's a shock.
Yeah, I mean, British and Swiss pharma, tech companies, plus BMW, Mercedes, Saab, all relocating factories to the United States. This is a disaster for Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm afraid it's only the beginning because what you refer to is absolutely true, and it's only headlines. So these are the aspirations or the first decisions made by these CEOs of the best. Frankly, in Scandinavia, in Sweden, Saab would be the best company. In Germany, likewise, BMW, Mercedes are really flagships symbolizing, state-of-the-art German industry. And if these guys are saying today, in the next semester or in the next 9 months, we are going to do that, it is a disaster. So they just started to implement these new policies. And really, you could call it, cold pragmatism from the part of British and European capitalists. But it's not only that, it's the perception that their own policymakers have let them down, right? So when you speak to CEOs in London or Berlin, very often, these guys are not traders. It's not that they don't like Europe or that they don't like their own country, but they feel betrayed by their own governments, to make a long story short. So they're telling us, listen, in America, we get tax incentives. We get, documents signed by the federal government guaranteeing, right, that in the next 5 or 7 years, we'll pay lower taxes, and we get much cheaper energy. In Europe, our own prime ministers are obsessed with the war with Russia. They don't care about the price of energy, blah, 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 and they don't care about the competitiveness. I mean, I would say personally, the main issue is that, political elites in Europe have never been as disconnected from the world of big business, right? There's a big divorce from the world of industry and finance, which of course is focusing on productivity and growth as usual, and the world of, policymakers who seem to care more about, the environment or Ukraine or what have you, but there's no longer a focus on economic growth. It's as if most European leaders, at policy level, are thinking today that, GDP growth is no longer important. That is a suicide. It's a long-term suicide for the European economy.
And what about the incentives that the United States is offering? You mentioned them there. Are they reshaping global innovation flows when it comes to AI, when it comes to healthcare?
Yes. Once again, it's only the beginning, but the first figures we know about, because like I said, the CEOs, what they do, the CEOs of these big companies in Stockholm or Berlin or Frankfurt, they tell us today or yesterday what they will do in 6 months or 1 year, right? So you can extrapolate the trend. So the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. And it is frightening because it's money invested in cutting edge technology. In the past, Europe said, and they did export, or they did, offshore. So they transferred to Morocco or Algeria or Vietnam or Somalia or whatever. They transferred to poor countries the cheapest and easiest part of the production process, right? And the idea was, we will keep in Milan, Frankfurt, and Paris the cutting edge tech, which is linked to research. This is like the heart of the system, and who cares if cheap shirts or cheap electronic or metal components are made in Bulgaria or Morocco? No one cares. But here, for the first time in history, they're willing to transfer to America the most advanced part of their production process. That's why I'm calling it an economic suicide. And the figures are quite staggering. So today, Germany, the so-called engine of Europe, right? The economic engine of Europe. Germany today, their GDP is roughly 4.5 trillion dollars a year. It's a big economy, right? It's the third largest economy in the world, on par with Japan. Already, Germany every year, their German companies in foreign direct investment (FDI), they're investing $500 billion a year in America.
Okay.
And probably within the next 4 years, that number will reach $900 billion or $1 trillion per year invested in America by Germany.
So whatever happens, 2026 is probably not going to be a very good year for Europe when it comes to this situation. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Joining us from Paris, Director General at the World Pensions Council, Meher Nicholas Firstly. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's the first episode of our special economic coverage to take you to the end of the year, highlighting the top and most dynamic sectors of the year. Follow us over the coming days for more insights into the key sectors, and you can follow us on social media at Qnews EGY. From me and from Selma and from all of our economic team here at Q News, thanks for watching, and stay with us for In Focus next.